Board of Selectmen of Wenham's meeting of Tuesday, August 7th. We've already opened the meeting, had an executive session, and now are returning to open session. And as such, as I think is going to be the case as usual, but we do start our meetings with public input for items that are not on the agenda. So looking at our vast audience, and is there anyone in the audience
on the warm August evening that it is,
make a comment on something that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we will move on to announcements. And the first one Jack has, and it has to do with Wenham Day.
So I'm looking under my announcements. I have a tab that says announcements. There's nothing in it.
One?
Oh, one? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Wenham Museum Summer Fair. It's called Wenham Day. It's Saturday, August 25th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Rain date is August 25th. Hopefully we won't need that. The admission is free. It's a fair museum, and we have live entertainment, et cetera, but the best part is that there's an artesian vendors having all kinds of nice stuff to buy. I usually buy something. The fire department has an open house. There's pony rides. The town hall is open, which is a big...
it's when you can buy all your Christmas gifts, Jack.
That's right, John.
Ride the ponies.
You can ride the pony. Did you ride the pony last year, John?
I didn't, but my granddaughter did.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure you were at the petting zoo, though. So that they have all kinds of nice things. It's a fantastic affair, and that I would only encourage people. It's an extremely popular event, and if you want to get there by 10 a.m., you have to park kind of remotely. Excuse me.
we can. The mics will pick that up.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that it's very popular, it's very well attended, and that
parking is hard to find, you're right.
You need to park remotely and walk up, and that there's lots of police here that will allow you to walk across the street. Anyway, it's a very, very popular event. Hopefully you can come there, and that's it.
Okay. So our next announcement has to do with the 375th celebration. Hopefully everyone in town knows now that we're celebrating this year our 375th anniversary of being a town. And let's see. So join us for a townwide parade followed by a community day at Pingree Park on September 8th. I understand this is rain or shine, so it's September 8th. The parade will start at the Bucher School at 10 a.m., followed by the Community Day at Pingree Park from 11:30 to 3. Merchandise is available at the town clerk's office, and there is a Facebook page, facebook.com/Wenham375. There's also an email, wenham375@wenhamma.gov for questions or accommodations. The committee is doing a lot of work on this, especially on the parade, getting a lot of people involved, and it sounds like the excitement is building. I'm hearing more about floats and cars and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and kids, and so it sounds like it's really moving along, and we encourage everyone to, if not the parade, even to come to the Community Day, which I think we said last week was going to be combined to some extent with the community houses.
Community houses taking their resources and helping invest into arts.
I heard rumblings of the dunk tank earlier today. So.
Well,
they're looking for volunteers,
yes,
Catherine?
Actually.
They are indeed.
Yes, I did write back to the person who invited me.
And you volunteered?
Invited us. And told them, I'm really sorry, but I wasn't going to be able to do that, but I was pretty sure one of my colleagues would be happy to be.
I'll be willing to dunk if you're willing to dunk.
Oh, not happening.
If it's a day like today, I'll do it.
Okay, you guys
fight over it.
I'll dunk if you dunk.
It's actually, this one is actually a bucket on the head. Either way, I said thanks, but no thanks. So anyway, that's all. The community anniversary parade and Community Day, put it on your calendar, Saturday, September 8th.
Yep.
The next announcement has to do with the Citizens Leadership Academy, and John.
Yes. Where'd it go? Sorry. All right. The Town of Wenham is going to conduct their 3rd annual Town of Wenham Leadership Academy Fall Program. Now, of all the things you can do to be part of your community and a good citizen, this is number one, because town government and the form of town government which we rule under, or we're guided under, this is fundamental. I mean, it's as pure a democratic process as possible. So I encourage those who have not had the opportunity or taken the time to attend. It's only 11 weekly sessions. It's led by our department heads for each part of the program. The academy is at no cost for any of the participants. All residents 18 and over are encouraged to attend. Registration will open in August, which is now. So, do you know, Peter, if that's started yet, or?
It's open, yeah,
Oh, it is?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Academy concludes with a mock town meeting, so you get an actual experience of our town meetings if you have not had the time to put into a town meeting yet. And so that you don't have to be there, but you can be there and just learn what goes on. And Thursday, the Thursday session starting on September 13th. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of good things to learn. Strongly encourage it. I'm going to try to be there for as many as I can. That's it.
Okay. We have one more
Yeah, I got one
announcement,
more.
and it's yours as well, John, having to do with letters of
All right.
interest.
Now, the town is also is requesting letters of interest to fill scholarship funds for the scholarship fund, educational fund, and elderly and disabled relief committees. And these funds that are coming into our coffers consist of, the scholarship fund, as I mentioned, is $3,951.98. Education is $10,345.43, and the elderly and disabled is $12,178.17. Please submit these letters of interest so that you can be on to this group that would help decide where these funds are going and qualify the contenders for this. So we really could use your help. And Peter, what's the best? Just
So I have a question. I don't think you can answer, but Peter might. So how does money get into this fund?
So if you remember,
For
we
the tax.
added.
It's not like it's a fortune here, we distribute.
No, but we
tax.
at town meeting this year added the new Veterans Assistance Fund.
Right.
And then on last month's tax bills, for the first time,
Oh,
we
yes.
included the option to donate to any one of the 4 funds. We had the 3 existing before, which is
Right.
what those prior balances were from.
Right.
But we hadn't included that option
Right.
in many years for residents, so the money was effectively just sitting there, and there was no committees allocating it or
Okay.
taking applications or anything. So the idea was, we put it on the tax bills, we wanted to reconstitute these committees so that the funds could get spent. And there are some statutory restrictions on the use of those funds, but the committees do have a fair amount of discretion in awarding
Thank
funds
you.
for those different
So
categories.
the source of the funds is basically from the tax rolls, or somebody listens to us tonight and they feel overly generous, and they can write a check out and send it in.
Correct. And we have gotten...
Unlikely, but nevertheless possible.
Yeah, we've gotten some donations just in this first round of tax bills that we
The
sent
town
out.
clerk back there had an interest in, I heard some noise back there, but anyway.
Well, what we really are looking for tonight is people to join the committee, the group, that will
Spend
decide where these funds are
Right.
disseminated to.
We put the call out back in mid to late spring, and I think it got kind of lost in the mix of all of the other annual appointments. And so just wanted to kind of refresh and see if we can get some folks who are interested in serving on those
That's good.
committees.
So let us know. It's probably not a very heavy lift, and it might involve you in the town in some,
Yes,
constructive way.
could be a ladder to a
Thank
select.
you. All set, Catherine.
Okay. So the next thing on our agenda are reports, and as always, we have a town administrator report. So to Peter for that.
Yeah, so a few updates. The first is more of an announcement than anything else, but wanted to get the word out that our library, their strategic plan is set to expire in the next few months. And it's a 5-year strategic plan that really creates a blueprint for everything that the library does. We want to get resident input in the process, and so we're putting together a strategic planning committee that actually only talk about a relatively light lift.
Yeah, one meeting?
They have one meeting
Just one.
on October 11th, so I know...
Last 14 hours.
That's right. I know Jan Dempsey, the library director, is trying to get the word out through her various channels, might even be in the Chronicle, but she wanted to, us to try to get the word out as well. And there will be a facilitator from the state to come in and help with essentially a brainstorming session. We have a excellent strategic plan now. Jan and the library board definitely use it in guiding their decision-making processes. So if you are interested, you can reach out directly to Jan at the library, and the phone number there is 468-5577. It's the main line to the library.
Just parenthetically, I think they do a great job. I go down the road a couple of times for research purposes, and that I'm always impressed on how helpful they are, and that how many people actually use the library.
I agree, and we'll pass along the
Never hear
sentiments.
complaints from any of the library situations. It's just,
Doing a great job.
yeah, good people.
Some good news on the legislative front. As you know, the State House wrapped up in the wee hours of the morning, the end of the last month, their session for this year. And coming out of that process, Senator Tarr and Representative Hill did secure, we'll call them authorizations. It's not necessarily funding, but authorizations for a number of Wenham projects. Those include $480,000 for drainage upgrades on Topsfield Road by the Danvers line there after the rail trail.
Yes.
Those are, don't qualify as culverts, and so we don't really have a great vehicle through the different grant programs to get funding to do that work, but you can see in peak weather that roadway does get submerged, and it's caused it to fail a little quicker than other roads, and it's obviously a main access point on 97 there. So that project we anticipate to cost about $480,000.
That's really great. It's terrific.
$500,000 for the restoration of the Miles River. I know that's something that's been an ongoing discussion for a decade plus. There was a task force that was convened with a number of other area communities. It's ultimately an Army Corps of Engineers project, but at least there is a set aside now at the state level for some potential funding for that project.
Where would that money go? To the town of?
No, it would be for the Army Corps or their
Oh, it's to be held in Boston.
Contractors.
In Boston for the purpose of dredging Miles River.
Correct, and just to be clear, bond bills are authorizations, they're not appropriations. So it's essentially a placeholder so that it gives the governor authority to allocate funds for those projects up to a certain amount.
Okay.
So it's nothing that is necessarily slotted into the budget.
We can't spend it yet.
Correct.
It's not a grant, it's a
Correct.
allocation.
It is.
Yeah.
And the final piece, there's a write-up in the Sound News today about it, a reference, and a part of a larger article was the $500,000 in the economic development bond bill for our much talked about signal or signals on Main Street in our downtown area.
Which gets worse and worse and worse every time I come here. Honest to God.
And I will say, I did hear from the Central Transportation Planning staff. I asked a week or so ago about the status of their report, and it's going through their internal review process now, and we should expect to get a final draft in the next few weeks to month or so. So once we come out of that, then it's the next step of meeting with MassDOT and getting the process qualified to be eligible for state funding.
In the meantime, is there something our police department, our police chief can do to try to help control some of the very fast-moving vehicles out there?
So-
I mean, it really is
Yep.
very dangerous.
So
They're
you'll
not getting better as
You'll
Jack
see the cruisers are parked out in front of the fire station in particular on a regular basis to try to do traffic enforcement along the corridor, and they also sit across the street at the corner, right
Very-
by
very
right by
occasional.
the tea
Yeah,
house.
yeah, that's my,
Not very
that's my
often,
feeling.
very occasional.
I will remind you that MassDOT did commit to making a number of temporary
Right.
traffic improvements. They couldn't do it this construction season because it was too far along, and they didn't have it kind of slotted into their schedule. But they did commit to making those, recognizing that this is probably going to take several years. They did commit to doing those next year out of pocket on their own dime, with the town not making any contributions. So that's adding clear turning lanes, putting in better markings and
Speed bumps.
signage, and, well, narrowing the roadway to try to, the traffic calming measures.
Yeah.
So that should be coming next year.
A lot.
The last piece, and
I really don't understand. It's not like 500 houses or 1,000 houses has been built in the area in the last, 2 or 3 years, but the amount of traffic is exponentially increased over the last couple of years. It's
We've got to look at
incredible.
our neighbors to the north that have,
Upper
put
Street,
up
people are
to-
coming up Upper Street.
And neighbors.
it's not just,
Yeah,
it's not just Wenham, it's
And the other way,
Hamilton,
all
Ipswich.
the ways.
It's the, a lot of it is the kind of the ancillary impacts of economic development, more jobs. I mean, you look at what 97 is now, it's a commuting, major road coming down. I come down it every morning, and there's a lot of traffic coming into Beverly and Salem and the whole North Shore. I mean, 128 south in the afternoons never had traffic.
Right.
And it does now.
It does, it's right. It's amazing.
And we did the light on 97 only after 3 people had died at that intersection. Never mind the countless other accidents that took place. But as much as I don't like traffic restrictions, it made so much sense once it was done.
Yep. I go through there, and we can thank Tom Tanis for that. Thank you,
Yep.
Tom.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, he deserves credit for it. He was the one that pushed it when he was a selectman, when I was a little boy.
So shifting gears just a little bit, but still
Yep.
on public safety, as you remember, we did request correspondence from the state relative to providing a little more details about State 911 takeover of the Regional Dispatch Center up in Middleton. We received that correspondence. There's a copy of it in your packets. It is not much in the way of new information. Essentially, it's a repetition of the conversations that we've had to date, which is they plan to take over by next July 1, and they plan to fully cover all of the municipalities' costs starting next fiscal year, but not much more in the way of discussion about governance and local control and those kind of things that everybody voiced pretty clearly in our meetings with the state officials in terms of that being important. So we've got our next board meeting where those issues will presumably again be discussed with the folks from the state in September. And in the meantime, we're still trying to finalize the date, but we should have a meeting with the Finance and Advisory Committee in the next week or so to review the reserve fund transfer request to undertake the regional dispatch feasibility study to understand what our options are with Danvers or Hamilton.
I found this letter to be particularly interestingly worded, not only in its absence of answering the question that was asked over and over again, talking about governance, but a comment of, we're interested in input, however, I'm interested in having this transition completed on or before July 1, 2019. That's a direct quote. That doesn't sound to me like, of course, we're going to take the time that we need to get the input and have folks at the table. I was a little concerned by this. So I'm glad that we're continuing to keep our options open and to look at Plan B. And I'm going to follow this closely, to see how we should follow it closely,
okay.
to
I
see
get
how
your
it
point.
evolves. It's not really specific or worded in a very collaborative way. That's my opinion, anyway. So, question or a suggestion. So we have a fair amount of new business. None of it is going to really take very long, but I'm noticing that we have two guests here that I believe
Yes,
are
we do.
here for letter H out
The
of
very end of the
A
agenda.
through I. So, with the board's permission, I'm going to
We
move
have to be
that
here.
up.
Why can't they be here?
Well, you know, so that issue is to, it's actually to review and potentially approve a draft letter of review for the open space and recreation plan, a follow-up on our presentation just last week, I guess, on the open space and recreation plan. And Jack,
Absolutely.
this is your agenda item. Thank you, Asma and
Okay, wait a minute.
Thanks
Which
for
one is
coming.
this
So
now?
it's H,
God almighty, I've done
it's
the H already,
the
okay.
back of the book. Would you like,
Come on, yes,
We're
yes.
almost done, Jack.
Yes, come on up, please, come on up. So this is I think Catherine just mentioned, a review and potential approval of draft letter review of open space and recreation plan. We have 5 minutes, it says 15, but that's obviously an error. But, okay, please.
Well, I'm
So-
Asma, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go
Asma
ahead.
Syed, Open Space Committee, and I'm here with Ernest Ashley, and just are looking forward to hearing your comments and hopefully an approval on the open space plan.
So let me, if I may, just back up a second. So last week, we had the presentation of the plan, and we have the plan, and we were asked to provide any input that we might have on this plan, and to provide that to Peter, who would consolidate it in the form of a review letter, which I believe is required
Yep.
in this plan. So that's our intention tonight, right, is to review a review letter, or at least maybe the options, the things that we would put in a review letter.
Yeah, so I think,
And I'm going to ask
yeah.
Peter to go through them, since we all sent our comments to him and he accumulated them. Is that fair?
Yeah, and so just because of the timing of everybody traveling and vacation and the like, essentially the majority, I think actually all of the feedback that was provided in terms of specific potential edits or changes were in the action plan. And I think the general sentiment was that the board wanted to have more input on policy-related decisions. So identifying, the top priority chapter land, using the matrix and all of that, that they would have some role in that process. Maybe it's a report out with recommendations from the Open Space Committee. I mean, it's a little open-ended, obviously, but just including the board as a responsible party on that particular item, yeah. And then, again, relative to, we talked a fair amount about funding during the presentation, and identifying, a sustainable, reasonable funding mechanism for the projects, and having the Finance Committee be involved in that discussion, because it would seem to fall within their jurisdiction. And so there are, I'll say, maybe 8 or 10 different minor recommended revisions, mainly additions to the plan, and they are almost entirely in the responsible party category. And I think the only change, or the only additional action item that was added, was part of the last page, relative to carrying out the plan. And there were two points that the board wanted added there. The first was calls for an annual report from the Open Space Committee to the board. And the sentiment was, this is really important, we've been talking about this a long time, and there's a lot there, especially in the first year or two. So that the board wanted actually a twice-a-year report, just so that we understood what was going on and were kept up to date with that. And then the other was that there were, that the Open Space Committee appointed liaisons to work with Conservation Commission, we don't really need to worry about, but the other relevant boards, whether it's the Select Board, Finance Committee, other land use boards, to keep them in the loop. Because again, a lot of moving parts and a fair amount going on out of the gate. And so the hope was just that there would be some communication by members of the committee to each of those boards.
Yeah. Great.
And I think those were
I think that's basically it.
high level,
Yeah.
the
Sound fair enough.
feedback that I got since the presentation. And is that,
Yeah, anybody want to
Wonderful.
add anything to that? No? Okay.
Yeah, you authored an email this afternoon, right?
A couple days ago, actually.
Well, it was after the meeting, we just met yesterday morning, so it was after the meeting. We met yesterday morning, and I didn't have it before that meeting, so it must have been either yesterday afternoon or this morning.
Well, I wrote the email on Sunday,
Oh, I'm sorry, I
actually.
only got it from Peter.
right, yeah,
And
Catherine
then
had written
I
it.
gave Peter my input, because
And then
that's
I
what we were
circulated it
going
to
to
the board
do.
yesterday.
And then he circulated it to
Okay,
everyone.
we were, John and I weren't copied on that, other than through Peter, so I got it.
The initial, right.
Right, because we were all supposed to send our comments to Peter.
Right.
So I did. And then he,
I had no problem with that email, I don't know if you read it.
No, that was fine. Yes, that was fine, Brad.
Yeah, so presumably, is that being shared with Mindy?
well, that's reflected
I'm
in,
asking Peter.
It hasn't been yet. No, the idea was that we were going to talk about it tonight, and then assuming everybody was on the same page, that I would send it out, and then we'd draft the actual review letter, which would incorporate all of those.
Yeah, so my
suggestions.
sense is we were about to conclude this. I just wanted to make sure that those comments, and John and I apparently agree, and that with Catherine's comments that you circulated to two of us,
Yep.
that they shared with the committee, and that I think that it had to do with the fact we want to make sure that we don't tell person A, committee B, we want not be at cross purposes, whatever. And
Right.
some high-level communication. So that's going to be incorporated in the comments that we're going to.
Yep, correct.
John, do you have any other comments on this? Catherine?
No, other than to say thank you for all the effort,
Great.
and glad we're coming to a point where we can start to take action.
Absolutely.
Those powerful cough drops you drink.
and I'll just say what I said again last week, and general comments. A very impressive piece of work. Clearly, a lot of work went into it. If we came out with nothing other than the matrix that's being used, that will be used,
Right.
we'd be better, way better off than we are now.
Right.
So to have all of that documentation and information that I think will be easily digested by the state. Everyone has said they're probably going to have some comment. But there's really a lot of work and thoughtfulness that went into that report. So we thank you for that.
Thank
I'll
you.
send the feedback from the board along with the redlined versions of the action plan, and
Get that to
then,
Lynn.
yeah, and then I'll draft the review letter based on those comments. that we
And we'll
make.
just let you know what's next in the process. I guess the report gets submitted to the state then at that point.
Yeah, and so the board will formally approve the review letter at their next meeting, but essentially it's going to be just a synopsis of
I
this
see.
feedback.
Got it. Well, thank you.
Good.
Anything?
Yeah, I have a motion, I'm about to read it.
Well, do we,
That's
are
my,
we-
no?
I know it's your agenda item, but do we actually have a letter, or are we going to approve?
Yeah, I think the idea is that we'd actually approve it at the next meeting, just because
Oh,
Because we
the
don't-
feedback was late breaking.
yeah, that's good.
That's fine. That works.
Does it all
No,
sound?
I don't understand, please
That sounds great.
elaborate.
So we had originally put together the packet, assuming that we'd have the feedback earlier, so the motion was included. but then ultimately, just
it.
because of the timing of it,
Okay,
kind of send the feedback along and then
got it.
draft the letter for the next meeting.
To me, the feedback sounds
Feedback,
great.
which I just mentioned a few minutes ago.
I think it sounds very fitting, so I don't think there's any problem with that.
Just requires that we keep an active committee.
That's right, and we will.
Absolutely,
Good point.
which is really important. Totally
Right.
agree.
Right. But this is the exciting part, right?
Yeah.
Right.
To actually get to do some of this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to being involved.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks so
Thanks a lot.
much.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so moving back up to A on new business, we have appointments. And Jack, I think you have all of the appointments tonight.
Jack, you're in appointment heaven.
Right.
Groups of them.
Says 5 minutes, I better talk fast. Okay.
Okay.
Board of Election Registrars. Is that why you're here, Diane, by the way? No. Just,
No, she's with me.
For B.
I thought you just were extremely interested in the process of this Board of Selectmen. Okay. Election officers, Regina A. Baker, Bruce D. Blanchard, Judith A. Brubinski, Joseph P. Kavanaugh, Julie M. Clay, Karen Damour. I pronounce all these names correctly. I deserve a re-election immediately. Juliana Dodge, John W. Earhart, Laurie Earhart, Mary Jo Favazzo, Milena A. Who's Italian here?
Giacalone.
There you go, thank you. Dorothy A. Goody,
Howdy.
Gowdy, Susan Herrick, Peter Hersey, Diane E. Lang, Patricia M. Lucy, Pat Lucy, Don Deluxton, Joanne B. Mastranzi, Paul Mendoza, Patricia K. Purdy, Stephen B. Quinn, Evelyn B. Simpson, Lauren M. Schwartz, Thomas Tanos. God, he's been around forever.
Must not have a
And
middle
he's served
initial.
on just about everything.
He has. Thank you for Tom. Lily C. Ting, Teresa A. Von Statz, and William J. Wilson III. And that's it. And that municipal hearing officer is Peter Lombardi. So, let's see. Do we,
Motions for each of those, I think.
yeah, let's see. Where's the motion? Oh, yeah. I move to appoint. Wait a minute.
This one should be Roseanne, I
Yeah, the
think.
first one goes
Board
in.
of Elections registrars.
She's the only one?
On the Board of Election registrars, the other people are election officers.
Right, that comes next, Jack. The next page.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I move to appoint Roseanne. Is that how you pronounce that? Really? There's no I at the end of it, it's just an E. Okay, to the Board of Election Registrars for a term beginning September 1, 2018, and ending March 31, 2021. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Roseanne,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Yep. Now
I've
comes
just
the
read
bigger
the
list.
election officer appointments. I don't know why that was first, but that's in my package that was anyway. So anyway. I move to appoint the following people I just mentioned a few minutes ago for election office for one-year term beginning September 1, 2018 and ending August 31, 2019. Do I hear a second?
I would second the motion.
Further discussion?
Just one amendment, I guess, or correction. In the middle of that page, the person, Mary Jo's name is, Jack said it correctly, but it's written Mary Jo Favazza, and her name is Mary Jo Favazzo. Ends in an O. So just for the certificates, et cetera.
Yes, I see her at church every week. She'll
Yeah,
be
and you
very disappointed if I didn't get that right,
You
but I'm
did,
sorry.
you did get it right. You said it right.
I did.
It was just not written
Yeah.
correctly.
Chuck,
Okay.
sorry about that.
That's the only.
That's her husband.
That's the only
Okay.
discussion I have.
Okay.
Further discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Okay.
Okay, so B is next, right? Yeah, okay.
One more. One more.
One more? I got another one?
You should like this one, Jack.
I should, huh?
Yeah.
Should definitely
Yeah,
like this
for all
one.
those
That's part of the reason why you had this
Lawn
motion.
waterers.
I move to appoint myself as the
Yeah.
assistant
That would be good.
There we
water
go.
commissioner. No. I move to appoint, oh, you really? Peter Lombardi as municipal hearing officer for a one-year term beginning August 7th, 2008. Why August 7th, Peter?
That's today.
Okay.
That's a good reason.
It's,
Not next week, but not last week? Okay.
Right, effective
See
immediately.
how timely these minutes are? And ending June 30th, 2019. Second?
Second that motion.
By the way, what does the municipal hearing officer do, Peter? Why don't you tell the people what a badass you are?
I don't know if I can do that, but I will say that the town meeting adopted MGL Chapter 40U.
I'm not drinking.
Is that just coffee right there?
It is, but when I laugh and drink at the same time, it's sometimes.
sorry.
problematic. I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to.
So the town adopted Chapter 40U earlier this spring, and what that is essentially a vehicle to impose fines for certain bylaw violations without going through the non-criminal disposition process, so without having to go through the courts. So in our particular case, the only bylaw violation that it applies to is water use restrictions, near and dear to your heart, Jack. And so the penalties are $50, according to our bylaws, $50 for the first offense and $100 for each subsequent offense. And so by appointing me as the municipal hearing officer, the town can then, because this adoption has been approved by town meeting and by the Attorney General, we can now move forward with that process as opposed to going through the courts. And I will say, anticipating your question, that there have already been a number of warning letters issued to residents who have violated the water ban, and I will be.
So who gets the badge, you or Jack?
Yeah,
We'll let them find out.
I'm the lucky guy.
Yeah. So, a question. So, if a person, a homeowner, is fined for using water against the water ban, and they could just pay the fine.
Yep.
If they want to contest the fine, then they would ask for a hearing with you.
Correct. There's an appeals process.
like
The
that.
thing that's unique about this, if you'll remember, is if people fail to pay the fine and don't appeal it, the town can put the unpaid fine on their water bill property tax, which isn't the case in going through the non-criminal disposition process.
So you may not get too many of these people. May get fined and may choose to just pay them. Okay.
So Peter, has anyone actually paid, have you actually fined anyone yet?
No.
That's upcoming though, right? Based on the lush lawns I see.
I will say, the last time I had the discussion with the water and superintendent, there were double-digit warning letters that were sent out, but it's been about a week and a half since I last saw it.
So perhaps at the next meeting, you might be able to report how many actual fines you've levied, not necessarily identifying the street or the homeowner, but that you actually, this is the third year in a row we're doing this, and so that, so you've actually issued fines, and so that
Well,
you
it's
might
the town
not.
issuing fines, not myself, but yes. Just to be clear.
Someone underneath, well, someone has to issue the fines, so that they work for you someplace
You
along
just
the
said you were
line.
going to get the badge.
The Water Commission.
The water superintendent.
Look at they left already, so that,
Yeah. That's true.
yeah, okay, check it, okay. I move to appoint, I've already done that, so do I have a second?
Discussion.
Second that
Thank you
motion.
for that commentary, Peter, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Everyone knows you're the man. Further discussion?
No. Can't think of a
All
better
set.
person.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
That was a hand vote, Catherine.
I would be glad to be the assistant municipal hearing officer in his absence. but,
Non-stipended position, Jack.
Yeah, well,
All right.
I'll pass on that.
So we.
Next in line.
Next in line
Okay.
is John.
We're looking at an approval of a warrant for the state primary. And if I could have Diane Bucco, our town clerk, explain to us
What's going
What
on?
does this mean?
This means that the Mass State primary is scheduled for Tuesday, September 4th.
Okay.
Easiest day ever to
FYE,
say.
FYI, that's the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Right.
Wenham voters, of course, vote here at Town Hall between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. If you cannot commit to voting in person on that day, you should apply for an absentee ballot. You can get the absentee ballot applications on the clerk's page of the website, or just come into Town Hall and absentee vote anytime during regular Town Hall hours. If you're a new voter or new to the area voter, you must be registered by Wednesday, August 15th. That's next Wednesday, to be eligible to vote in this primary, which again is Tuesday, September 4th. Because it's a primary, there are different ballots. There are 3 this year. There's Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian. Those are our 3 accepted parties. If you are registered as a Democrat, you will be obligated to vote on the Democratic ballot. Same thing with the Republican, you'll vote on Republican ballot as Libertarians. If you are unenrolled or registered as unenrolled, otherwise known as independent, you are entitled to choose your ballot at the polls. You do, however, need to know which ballot you want to choose when you get to check-in, so you need to be sure to check what's on what ballot before you go in. I have sample ballots in my office. The specimen ballots will be posted at the Council on Aging in the library as soon as they arrive from the state. But I can tell you that the Democratic ballot has 5 contested races with 18 candidates in all. The Republican ballot has 3 contested races with 16 candidates. And the Libertarian ballot has 2 candidates on it, no contested races. That's that. If you want to change your registration because of this information or party affiliation, you can do that up until August 15th, which is next Wednesday, either through me or online at very fancy website, registertovotema.com. That's good to know. And so today I just came to thank you all for signing the warrant that advises the town, such as I'm doing right now, that we are having an election. And then the police constable will post it where it needs to be. So,
Question.
yes.
I'm trying to remember, have we done this procedure in the past, or is this something newer?
We have always had a warrant
Right.
for any, and the selectmen have always signed it, and we've always had it posted, yes.
Okay.
Has someone come and explained it to you, what's going on for the election? I'm not sure. I think I've always done that.
Yeah,
But it's just another way to get the word out to
you do a
vote.
superb job at your
Thank you very
job.
much. Thank you very much. On that note, I just want to remind everybody that voting is our right, that we in the United States should not ignore or take for granted, and that you should remember to vote on September 4th and all other future elections, which includes town meetings.
7 a.m. to 8.
7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday after Labor Day, or get your absentee ballot in soon.
No early voting.
There is no early voting.
Oh, that's a good point, right.
And that's
So I have
it.
a question
So-
for you, Diane.
Yes.
So in the past, how many Libertarian ballots?
Ballots, there are a few.
Like, what's the
I want to
few?
say we have 4 Libertarian voters in the town of Wenham, and of course, if that's what you're registered for, that is the only ballot you can get. So we have had them, and I believe,
So there's 4 registered Libertarian
I'm guessing
voters. Could be
2,
5.
4, something like that. I can't remember off the
Okay.
top of my head. And they would, if they voted, which I hope they do, they would have to vote on that ballot.
But they wouldn't fill this room, okay.
They would not fill the room. no.
And they're uncontested races.
And they're uncontested races, but they would, if they were to win the primary for their party, which I would assume that they will be on the ballot in November.
Well, if there's only 3 or 4, of course they're going to win. You know.
Yes, 2 of them, 2.
Yeah, 2 of them.
2.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Diane.
signing that. I'll get
Yes.
that out right away.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's not a more ferocious and dedicated public servant than Diane Bucco. I got to tell you, she is top
I
shelf.
talk to her every day. You can go home now. We have to stay, but you can go home.
Okay, so
All
I
right,
think
I'm
we
all
have
set
a
on that.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Okay. I move the Board of Selectmen approve the warrant for the 2018 state primary on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those,
Question for me.
any discussion? Nope. All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, so
Thank
we've
you.
got a warrant. The next thing on the agenda are a bevy of liquor licenses, and I'm going to try to cover them sort of in groups.
Is that lots of them?
Well, 4.
Looks like there's a few.
4 at the same time.
Italian word.
Bevy. That isn't the word I would be thinking of if I had my Italian hat on. The first 3, to expedite this conversation a little bit, the first 3 liquor license requests come from the Wenham Museum, in particular Kathleen Feldman from the Wenham Museum. The first one is a private dinner on Monday, August 13th, 2018, from 5 to 8. Also from Kathleen Feldman at the Wenham Museum. We just heard about this. Wenham Summer Fair, Saturday, August 25th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And also Kathleen Feldman, Wenham Museum, the Attic Treasures Shop and Sip, Friday, September 25th, 2018, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I think that since those are all made for the Wenham Museum by the same person, they've been listed together in one motion, which I'll make in a second. It appears that all of the documentation that's required is in our book.
Paid their fees.
Fees, certifications, recommendations from the police and fire, as is the welcome custom from the Wenham Museum, all in our packet.
Are you sure that date, September 25th, as a Friday?
This is written Friday, September 25th. Let me see.
September 28th.
Oh, it's 28th.
The golf tournament is on September 21st,
It's the
which is a Friday.
Yeah, it is.
So that's
yeah.
obviously an error.
Actually, the motion is written correctly. The information says the 25th, but the motion does say Friday, September 28th, which is correct. Yes? So I would have gotten it correct by the time we got to the motion. Okay. So I'll just read that motion. I move the Board of Selectmen approve 3 one-day all-alcoholic beverages liquor licenses requested by Kathleen Feldman for the following events being held at the Wenham Museum at 132 Main Street. A private dinner, Monday, August 13th, 2018, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Wenham Summer Fair, Saturday, August 25th, 2018, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the Attic Treasures Shop and Sip, Friday, September 28th, 2018, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Is there a second?
I would second your motion.
Any discussion?
Yes. One more will be coming September 21st for the annual golf tournament that Wenham Museum has at the Wenham Country Club. They'll be asking for liquor licenses for both the Wenham Country Club as well as the Burnham Hall here for their event. I think that we only have 2 nonprofits in town. I would encourage people to support it. Peter and I are going to be playing golf. I usually win, but he's going to.
We're on the same team, Jack. I don't know how you win.
I have to fight. That's why I'm the scorer. That's why I win. Not that I'm a better golfer. Anyway, and but that'll be forthcoming, presumably the next meeting. That's the only discussion I have.
Good
So
for you.
if we're ready to vote on those 3, yes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the first 3 approved. The last one is also at an event at the Wenham Museum, however, requested by an individual. And I'll just make the motion. Again, all the documentation seems to be in order. I move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day beer and wine liquor license for Kate Thatcher, I guess it's also a different license, with the Hamilton Wenham Mothers Club for their annual membership drive at the Wenham Museum, 132 Main Street, Wednesday, September 19th, 2018, from 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m.
I'm all for mothers, so I'll second that motion.
Mother's drinking. Discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous for
A
that.
lot of liquor going on there. Okay.
Yes.
Jeez.
A lot of-
It's a
Okay.
great organization to join. Look at
At
that.
most, we've
Yeah.
had one at a
It
time.
actually is a very active organization. In my Wenham lifetime, it's been active, nothing, and now quite active again, so it's nice. Maybe it's the alcohol. The next thing that we have, again, 2 actual requests to use Wenham streets. And John, you have that. We have both of those.
Oh, yes, all right. We have a ride-a-thon, a bike-a-thon. Ride bike-a-thon. It's and there's also a 5K walk. Tom D. Desfosses. And that's going to happen on Sunday, September 9th, 2018. There's map routes and map flyers, event flyers. They have met their insurance requirements. The police and fire have reviewed this route and are okay with it. And I'm trying to remember, have we done this one before? It's not, for some reason, it's not ringing a bell, but
I think we've done it one time before.
Before?
Yeah, I think both of these we've done once before,
Beth Israel.
if I remember correctly.
so they've met the compliance responsibilities, and I would move the Board of Selectmen authorize Tom Desfosses to use the specified sections of Maple Street, Cherry Street, Monument Street, Cedar Street, and Topsfield Road for their reason to bike-a-thon and 5K on Sunday, September 9th, 2018, raising funds for leading-edge cancer research at Beth Israel and Deaconess Medical Center in Boston.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Good cause.
Here we go.
And one more request to use streets. I think we all use them all the time. For the Love of Pete motorcycle ride. Which I think should be,
The motion
Also in
should be right at
section
the end
D.
there.
Oh, okay. For the love of Pete. I move the Board of Selectmen authorize Vicky Morney use the specified section of Topsfield Road, Cherry Street, Monument Street, Main Street for their second annual For the Love of Pete Memorial Motorcycle Ride on Sunday, September 23rd, raising funds for the Danvers People to People Food Pantry.
For the love of Pete.
I'll
Love of
second
Pete.
that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes.
Unanimous. Annual block party road closure request. Jack.
It's me. I get all the heavy-duty ones.
I'm sure.
After you, John, of course. Letter of request to close Puritan Road and Mayflower Drive Saturday, August 25th, the rain date August 26th, 2018, from 2 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. from Laura Revis, 23 Mayflower Drive. We have a recommendation from Steve Kavanaugh, the Chief of the Wenham Fire Department, as well as Captain Kevin Napoli, Captain of the Wenham Police Department. And I'm just about to read the motion. Vote I move to approve the street closure of Puritan Road and Mayflower Drive on Saturday, August 25th, 2018, for 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. for the annual neighborhood block party. Do I have a second?
I would second your motion.
Second. Any further discussion?
Yes, a question. So the description talks about a rain date,
Yeah.
but that's not in the motion.
Oh,
Right.
We
that's
could
right.
certainly add
I
it.
presume that if they're going to have it on the 26th, they would like to also have the roads
I
closed.
feel
on
like
the
they actually had to use the rain date sometime in the past couple of years, so
Right.
probably would be appropriate to add that language, yes.
So it would say what, closure on Saturday, August 25th.
Where did you see that?
The very first page.
I just read it a minute ago. So,
Well, you-
John.
Yeah,
So,
that's what
Okay.
made me
Oh,
think
yeah,
about it.
I see what
I
you're saying.
read it, and it said,
Description has the rain date.
parenthetically, it was a parenthetical expression
Right.
in there, but it wasn't part of the actual description, but I read it anyway.
Yeah, and it wasn't in the motion.
Right.
We just.
Well, with
include-
rain dates these days, maybe you can have a heat date too, because if it was as hot as the house is today, I wouldn't want to be out there, but, if
Calling
it
them alternate dates. So
Yeah.
this motion should include
an alternate date,
an alternate date of
as
August 26th.
opposed to a rain date.
August
I doubt, and,
26th,
well, it could be
2000.
August 25th,
Yeah.
it's pretty gosh darn hot out there now. I wouldn't be out there from 2 o'clock and whatever it is, and that,
To 7:30.
you
yeah.
wouldn't catch me out there at 2 o'clock in the 100-degree weather.
Well, hopefully by then it will have cooled off just a little.
Maybe the neighborhood is such have a party neighborhood, maybe I couldn't resist, but
It is Wenham Day, right?
Now that we have an alternate date, I would second your motion.
that's a good point.
It's late, it only overlaps it by a little. Wenham Day ends at 3,
Ends at 4 technically, but starting to wind down
Yeah.
at 3.
so it does overlap a little bit. I'm sure they, well, I'm not sure that they know this, but I
That's
suppose,
very far removed from the area of traffic and events for the Wenham Days.
well,
Yeah, I'm going to vote to approve this, but I think we should inform them if it's the same as next year, on the conflicting with a Wenham Day thing, perhaps they might want to consider an alternate day for that, because, you know, this is, huh?
You have concerns about parking?
I'm concerned about drawing people away from Wenham Day, and that.
because it's a pretty big area, group, a lot of people live, right,
Yeah, we don't-
Oh, I see.
that
So-
might attend the block party.
Yeah, and so that.
So we want to try to be supportive of
We want to
Wenham
be
Days.
supportive of Wenham. That's the big thing here, in that.
And they might have picked that date specifically because they had people coming in for Wenham Day and they wanted to piggyback off it. I don't know.
People coming in from Wenham Day. But, well, anyway, I think that we should, they've already made a lot of preparation for this. I'm just saying that if this was a year from now, I would, you might want to advise them that having a block party conflicting at the same, overlapping with the same time of Wenham Day could be problematic. I just, you know, nicely. Further discussion besides mine?
No.
My over-enthusiastic.
No, I agree with your recommendation.
Yeah,
I think it's a little bit late in the game to
it's late in the game.
make a reversal here.
Exactly. But we can ask them to look at Wenham Days next year and see if they can schedule
Yeah.
the block party at a different day than Wenham Day. Because if I'm still here, I'm not sure I'm going to vote for this next year. Anyway, further discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Well, you know, we just ask them, you know,
No, it's
be sensitive to the fact that this, you know, Wenham Day is a big deal.
It's one time a year we do something.
Exactly.
As a town.
Yeah.
So our next order of business is a review of the Housing Choice Small Town Capital Grant Program and discussion of potential projects. This happens to be my agenda item. I'm going to turn it to Peter in a second. I was made aware of this grant several weeks ago, and I want to thank Peter for delving into it a little bit more, because my initial read of it made it sound like there was nothing in Wenham that might be applicable, that we wouldn't even be eligible. But you apparently have made some phone calls, talked to some people, and have found out something different. So if you would.
Yeah, so this is a new grant program, new this year, that is related with the larger housing choice initiative that Governor Baker has rolled out to try to partner with communities and encourage affordable housing development across the state. In building that program, they recognize that it might be a really good fit for a lot of the larger municipalities, but for the smaller towns, particularly those with populations, I think, of less than 7,000 residents, that we're in a little bit of a different situation, different dynamic, and so they created this kind of spin-off grant program, funded it with $1 million for this fiscal year. That's the good news. I think the bad news is that there are 134 towns that have less than 7,000 residents, so there's a relatively
It's a little big little
small
audience there.
pot of money to split up a lot of different ways. That being said, you never know how many communities actually submit an application.
The criteria.
Yeah, and fit the criteria. I think our initial reaction was, I don't know that we might have some eligible projects, but they wouldn't score particularly well. And the maximum award is up to $100,000, and it's a pretty broad umbrella of capital projects that would qualify. But I reached out to the new program director at DHCD at the state and asked about, everything's a little timely, the 40 Hell Street project, and whether that particular project would be something that would qualify. And indeed it would, and it would also seemingly, looking at the criteria, seem to score pretty well, particularly because it's obviously housing related and you get bonus points for those kind of projects. And they're looking for something that's shovel-ready. They want to spend the money in this fiscal year. And they also, you score better if the projects are referenced in a plan. And we just approved the Affordable Housing Action Plan that talked about those specific kinds of projects. And so while the program director couldn't make any promises, the conversation certainly was, she gave indications that our application would be looked on favorably. And so my thought was that we, if the board was supportive, that we would submit an application for the maximum amount. And assuming that they're going to be, trying to allocate as much funding, stretch the funding as far as possible. Even if we got a lesser amount, our project in particular is easier to award a lesser amount because it's not a discrete project that costs a set amount of money. It's the amount we're asking for is less than the total project amount, and if it's 50,000 or 30,000 or whatever, it still is something. And the idea behind the application would be, if we are awarded the funding, then the town could potentially decrease its contribution out of the Affordable Housing Trust balance. And so we would still be committed to providing the $230,000 in acquisition costs for the project, but that might include some state funding from this source, and then we'd have more money in that Affordable Housing Trust fund to support other initiatives in the future. So that's the idea behind, that would be the idea behind submitting an application. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Given those parameters, it certainly does seem to fit, and in even reading through some of the information here, even the fact that we have done a housing production plan or a housing needs assessment recently will buy us a few points.
Yep.
The only question I had in reading through this is in the application itself, or the screenshot of the application, it talks about, is it there? No, in the project readiness category, it says for real estate acquisition projects, which, by the way, I think that's the only use in this case, because I'm pretty sure Habitat is going to ask the trust for some construction money, but I can't be certain that's going to happen in this fiscal year. Certainly the acquisition cost would be. But it says for real estate acquisition projects, the applicant has site control, an executed purchase and sale agreement, which makes it sound as if the applicant needs to be, in this case, Habitat.
So that's to get, my understanding, that's to get the maximum amount of those points.
Okay.
So there's that, of all the categories, that would be the one that we'd probably score a little lower on, but we wouldn't be disqualified.
Right.
It would just be that we would not get the maximum score.
That's a why not. That being said,
Exactly.
someone would have to write this grant, and it's due on August 17th.
August
Did I get that
17th to
right?
18th. Might be, I
Something
think it's
soon.
the 17th. Yep.
Like next week?
Yep.
And we have no trust meetings before then. Not that we really need the trust's input necessarily on this,
Yeah, I think
but.
it is ultimately, having completed a couple grant applications, it's a relatively straightforward, it's consistent with the Baker administration's streamlining of the grant application processes, especially the new ones that they have. So while the criteria is fairly extensive, ultimately they're looking for a brief narrative, an ask in terms of the funding, and some supporting documentation, all of which we have, I believe, already from Habitat. So I don't think that it's going to be hard to get the application in time.
Okay. Why not? I don't think we'd get any objection from the trust to be able to use less trust money and supplement. The ask is the ask, so this grant could only reduce the amount of money that the trust would be spending.
Right.
Because Habitat
Right.
has a specific
Yep.
ask.
And I explained to DHCD the fact that the town had already, committed funds from that source, and these would supplement those, and that was, if anything, it was indicative of the fact that the town was supportive of the project, and it had a so-called local match. So if anything, that's going to actually help us.
Indeed.
Indeed. Okay,
Very good point.
so we'll work together on that.
Okay.
Need a motion?
We don't have a motion here.
No, it was more just understanding, getting feedback from the board and seeing
Sure.
if there was support to submit the application,
Absolutely, go for it.
knowing that the board had just approved the funding at your last meeting.
Right, this-
for it.
Absolutely.
Nothing happens for a long time, and then, did I use the word serendipitously last time? A lot of things happen, so this would be great.
Okay.
I guess continuing along the vein of affordable housing, a couple of weeks ago, was it a couple of meetings ago,
Yeah.
the consultant who did the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan, Jennifer Golson, came and presented it basically to the public, including us, and I believe the FinCom was there. And this action item is just to get any feedback on that particular plan. If I may, I will just make 3 points to remind people. And then, this is a 10-minute, I think we could do it, or 10-minute. So if you recall that plan, the trust with this consultant put together 5-year goals. They were to advance public awareness of housing needs and community benefits, to prioritize allocation of trust funds to help achieve Chapter 40B, to support initiatives to help address local housing needs, and to advocate for town policy and regulations to promote creation of affordable housing. Those are the 5-year goals. I'll just read part of the priority initiatives coming from all of the feedback. The board, so that you understand where the trust is coming from. The boards, meaning the trust priority initiatives, intend to advance the 4 goals. The initiatives include actively promoting the construction of new affordable housing units that are well-designed and context-sensitive, as well as converting existing market-rate homes to affordable homes. Through these initiatives, the board aims to create 26 affordable units in the coming 5 years that will count on the state's subsidized housing inventory to complete with MGL Chapter 40B.
What are we doing tonight? I thought we already read and approved.
Well, we approved it.
No, there was no formal
There was
approval.
no formal approval required at that point. I think the trust would like to hear from the Board of Selectmen about whether or not the Board of Selectmen supports this
Did
plan.
we verbalize that evening?
I'm not sure that we did. I'm not sure we said anything
Well, let's
that
look at the
night.
minutes.
I'm pretty sure we didn't, but we can look at the
I
minutes.
think I know I made some comments, and I know you made some comments, I know John made some comments, and I think they're embodied in the minutes, and I can't believe that Catherine Tinsley has been derelict in her duties of describing that. I thought we were all quite supportive of their plan that evening. Whether or not that translated into a formal vote, but I'm just...
No formal vote is required.
No,
I guess.
but I think that we all made positive comments that evening.
So.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So in addition to that, I guess on behalf of the trust, we put out a 5-year budget. And I would be interested to hear your opinions on, in particular, 2 aspects of that. I think we did agree that it was a pretty aggressive plan. I don't think aggressive plan.
Aspirational, I would call it.
Yeah, and it relies on 2 revenue sources in particular. One of them is CPA appropriations, either directly to a project or an application by the trust to the CPA for funds to be put into the trust. And private donations, in the 5th year up to $100,000. And I think that came out of public.
Very aspirational, I'd say.
So I
Get your
guess it
checkbook
would be
tonight?
important to understand if the Board of Selectmen is supportive of working to encourage, for instance, the CPA to, if you agree with the plan, which sounds like you do, to encourage the CPA to, participate in this plan in terms of allocating CPA money.
Well, my comment is, in the abstract, yes, but, you know, I'd like to see the particulars for a particular, every year is on its own, so that I have to say that conceptually, yes, but we'd have to see the actual ask in the particular year or what they're asking for. If they're asking for $2 million to put in the bank, so they might think about it for the next 5 years, my answer is no. If they have something that they want to actually do in the following year, within the 18 months or so after the approval at town meeting, then I would like to see what it is they're asking for at the time, and so, as opposed to just going on record now that whatever they ask for, and regardless of the money, I would be supportive of. And I'm supportive of the affordable housing, but, you know, I'm supportive of town government, and I'm supportive of lots of things, but, you know, that in the abstract, I'd like to see, you know, a particular request as opposed to being held in a vote or in the minutes to say, you know, whatever they ask for, I'm in favor of.
So I guess I hear you, and I agree, but I think it was brought to our attention anyway through this process that there are a couple of models, one, the other, or mixed, that towns use relative to CPA money and affordable housing trusts. And we know that the Affordable Housing Trust was developed or chartered in order to have a pot, an accumulation of money that could be spent at the discretion of the trust and the selectmen together. And therefore, I think the word that's always used becomes more nimble than making an application to the CPA, which indeed involves town meeting, which is obviously a good thing, but takes longer. So there is a model that would suggest that some portion of CPA money, some percentage, some dollar amount every year of the affordable housing money would be transferred, and this was done a couple of times, from the CPA to the trust. And so I'm just curious, it's not for any particular project, it's just to say, do we think it's a good idea for the trust to have a renewable, say, source of funds, so that if something becomes available and a quicker action is required, there's money to do that? It's just an
Well, it wouldn't be a
opinion
quicker
at this
action because it
point.
has to go to town meeting, so that it can't be quicker.
Not the trust. The trust just.
Oh, I'm sorry, if it goes to the trust, that's right.
So if
Yes,
we're asking the
yes.
CPA
No, I
to
got
put
it.
in $10,000 a year,
Well,
the trust gets bigger.
if it's like 10,000 a
Well,
year, I
that's
suppose,
that's
yes,
not
but if it's,
much.
exactly. So that there might be some compelling reasons in a particular year why we just went through the open space plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We might want to buy some parcel down the road that cost us a boatload of money, and that so I wouldn't want to impede the ability of the plan we just heard at our last meeting by committing to a certain amount of money for the Affordable Housing Trust. And I'm not against that, but you know, I like to not. We're not committing right now. What is this, a sense of the board or something like
Well,
that?
it is, but it's important going forward. I mean, if the Board of Selectmen doesn't agree or has a particular disagreement with a portion of this plan, then the trust ought to know that and be aware of it and embrace it or have a discussion about it with. Kind of hard. I'm sitting in two hats right now.
You mean you're conflicted?
Well, I'm not conflicted because actually I see the
I'm just
benefits.
joking, Catherine.
But
Come
it will be important if this board is not interested in.
Why can't we just take it up every year? I mean, that every year that because every year we go through the whole budget with the schools. You know, everything is a 1-year thing, and so every year we can decide. Look at it. We have nothing else on the agenda coming out of the CPA, or the CPA can say they only have applications for $40,000, and you know, why not give them out of the CPA funds a request for, subject to town meeting approval, $50,000. I don't know that I presume I'd be in favor of that, but if we had a lot of competing priorities that particular year, I wouldn't want to inhibit our ability to put the money in some priority that, other than banking it at the Affordable Housing Trust, that there's only so much money the CPA funds can do. I'd like to be able to evaluate that at the time that we have a list of competing. They have a list of competing priorities. You know that. So coming up with a vote that, or a sense of the board that says whatever there's no specific dollar amount, this, right?
Well, there actually is. You know, I mean, if you looked at this as, certainly as the planning tool.
Yeah.
But there's a budgeted CPA amount every year for the next 5 years. And I think the contemplation is that, yes, some of those might be applications directly to the CPC for a particular project, but we don't know
Right.
when the project, so if we had a trust and it had $100,000 in it, we wouldn't be able to do this
I got-
Habitat for Humanity. So it's the
Yeah.
it's the pure purpose of having a trust, is to have some money in it all the time, to be able to react to something that would come up in between town meetings.
Can I
That's all.
ask a question?
Yeah.
As part of your discussions in putting this pro forma together, was there any conversation around not specific applications of the CPA for projects, and not an annual allocation, whether it's a 10% for affordable housing or any other number, but a reimbursement, for lack of a better word? The Hull Street project is a case in point. The Affordable Housing Trust had a balance of around $850,000, awarded funding $230,000, approved by the Board of Selectmen for that project, that then the trust or the town, with the support of the board, would then apply for CPA funding to essentially replenish the balance of the Affordable Housing Trust balance back to its original amount.
We-
I just didn't know if there was discussion
We
about that.
did have some discussion about that after the Hull Street project, for the Hull Street project became there. But there, you know, so looking out into the future, for projects like that, and the trust will have nothing. There's no renewable source of income unless some developer builds something and doesn't want to put in affordable housing, and the planning board agrees to have money. So
I guess my thought was that at least that way, town meeting has a sense of the kind of projects that are supported by the Affordable Housing Trust and the Board of Selectmen when they're approving funds to replenish
True.
that account.
true. And it's not, none of that, there wasn't a discussion of, oh, wow, we better get to the CPA and get them to do this. There was a discussion of these are options, and nothing really relative to the CPA in the first year or two, because, to your point, the trust has to gain people's confidence and trust, and we do have some money. So, you know, we'll continue to have the conversation, I guess. And
Well, I have a couple more points, and that I like Peter's suggestion, by the way. So let's say miraculously, and maybe not miraculously, that one way or the other, with a modest amount of funds, is $800,000?
Well, before the 250, yeah. Once we put in for the Hull Street project, there'll be 250 less. So more like 600.
How much would be left?
Like 600,000.
Okay. So let's just say, again, I will use the word miraculously, that we can go from, we're short 26 units, maybe we're short now 23 with this Hull Street thing, or 22, whatever, that $500,000 gets us over the 10% threshold. Then I would be reluctant, if I was a selectman, wanting to commit a specific amount of money to the Affordable Housing Trust once we got over the 10% threshold. And so that, I mean, everyone in town that I meet, and people who even I don't meet, but they, so everyone wants to get over the 10% threshold so we don't have a hostile 43B. But once we're over that, then we have it's another question. Now, people are generally in favor of affordable housing, but it's not the same impetus if you're under the over the 10% as you're under the 10%. So committing and for future, as an expression of the Board of Selectmen, for a specific amount of money to go to the CPC for affordable housing, absent a need to get over the 10%, I would not be so enthusiastic about that. Anyway.
Okay. But that's an important point, because I will tell you that the trust, at this moment, and with this plan, envisions itself being in existence and trying to meet the needs of housing beyond 40B, so that even when we reach our 10%, our housing needs assessment has shown that there is still a need for community housing, other housing, that would be eligible for trust funds or CPA funds beyond the
I
10%.
understand that, and that's
Sure.
laudable, and that's laudable, and that, but I'm just saying, the compelling reason to spend money in the Affordable Housing Trust is bifurcated as far as I'm concerned into, let's get over the 10% and let's see what, if once we're over the 10%, you know, that some projects you might want to not, would have swallowed hard and approved. If you're under 10%, you might want to swallow that hard again if you're over 10%. So that it might be semi-controversial. You might have said, oh, you know, we got to get over the 10%. It's very important to avoid a hostile 40B. But over the 10%, you might not have the same opinion about a particular project.
Okay, fair
Whatever.
enough. Just wanted to,
I don't know.
I'll relay input. Did you
Just
have
one
anything
selectman's opinion.
else, John,
I'm sorry?
did you have anything else you wanted? I'll just relay this back to
No,
the
I
trust,
think,
and that's the.
yeah, I think you guys have covered it.
Okay. Enough said on that particular issue.
Okay.
We did H
Can't wait to
already.
read the minutes and that one, Kathy Tinsley.
Actually, we
Truncate.
are up to minutes
That's me.
Jack.
since we.
Audience might know, I am the secretary of this board. I control the minutes along with
There
Kathy
you
Tinsley.
go, he's got it.
I vote to move to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes of July 16th, 2018. By the way, I've reviewed these with Catherine. She did an outstanding job as usual. I'm sure you've all read these and closely as I did,
Did you want to add in July 24th?
which means that,
also?
yeah, I'll have to do them one at a time. I don't
Oh,
know.
you do?
Well, I don't know if Catherine's going to tell me I have to do one at a time.
Well, the motion has both of them. I think it's,
Okay, July 24th, I'm all for, you know, how about all the minutes, you know?
well,
July 16th and July 24th, open meeting minutes, and so that,
I would second your motion, Jack.
further discussion.
None?
nope.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, now we're going to executive session minutes, second vote. I move to release the Board of Selectmen executive session meeting minutes of August 1st, 2017.
Second your motion?
Discussion.
None?
Roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Unanimous. I move to approve and release the Board of Selectmen executive session meeting minutes of July 16th, 2018. Do I hear a second?
I would second your motion.
Discussion.
Nope.
Roll call. Aye.
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 All in favor? Good. Lastly, I move to approve and hold the Board of Selectmen executive session meeting minutes of July 24th, 2018. Do I hear a second?
I would second your motion, Jack.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion?
Nope.
None?
Roll call vote. Aye. All in favor? Good.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Good.
I think that's it. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 8
Unanimous.
o'clock.
Thank you.
We hit the
Oh,
mark.
that was-